What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down the most played characters in Grandmaster so that we can break down exactly what the meta is, and we can talk about things that you can do differently and still get impact in your games, and some things that you should take from the high ranking meta. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for in-depth advanced VODs, tips and tricks, map guides, hero courses, and much more. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now, but without further ado, let's jump into this meta tier list. Now, what I always say is that tanks dictate every single meta. They are the important frame behind every single team composition, and the power level of tanks really are going to change what other characters are played and what other characters are viable. Now, right now, we have three big tanks that are seeing the most amount of play. There's Sigma at the very top, seeing an astronomically high amount of play. We have Wrecking Ball right underneath, that's still seeing quite a bit of play. And then quite a bit down, we have Roadhog seeing occasional play here and there, but still quite a bit relative to most characters in the game. Now, first off, let's talk about Sigma, who is actually just the best character in the entire game right now, and you bring so much impact on this character. However, I know a lot of you have looked at the meta, looked at where Grandmasters are playing, and maybe you're in one of the lower ranks and you're like, I can never carry on Sigma. Well, Sigma is not an easy character by any stretch of the imagination. Being able to consistently hit rocks, especially on other Wrecking Balls, timing it to where you hit other Sigmas when their shield either breaks or they're using their kinetic grasp, being able to use your rocks to contest people that are coming too close to you, and making sure that you have very good ability management, making sure that you keep that shield up using natural cover so that you never get caught out, and consistently poking so you get decently powerful ultimates. These are all things that are so important on the character if you want to tap into his power level. You see, the difference between a really good Sigma and just a decent Sigma is like a giant cavern. And honestly, a bad Sigma is just worse than just about any other tank. Now, moving on to the character that is a lot low elo friendly, we have Wrecking Ball, which is very good pretty much in all ranks, as people in the lower ranks don't really know how to counter a Wrecking Ball very well. A lot of people will focus him when they can't even kill him, or they'll just ignore him and he'll never die either way. And even in the higher ranks, when you start learning some of the fundamental tactics on Wrecking Ball, you can become this unstoppable force that gets tons of value. One of the most important things that you need to master is your ability to look for these opportunities to push someone out of position. Whether you're knocking a Sigma into your team, whether you're setting up a perfect slam on a target that your Tracer, the best DPS in the meta, spoiler alert, is gonna follow up on. Once you learn the appropriate routing across the map to make sure that you hit all the megas so that you're pretty self-sufficient, and you also take note of what tools the enemy have to try to kill you when you engage, so that you never engage yourself in a scenario where you're just gonna get insta-killed, then you'll just be this perma-threat that gets to keep going in, keep building ult charge, keep setting up these plays where you're either booping people or slamming people, and that is the way that you get a ton of value in your games. And if you want to carry on tank, both of these two tanks you definitely can do it on, but Wrecking Ball is most likely going to be an easier time in the lower ranks because, like I said, he is a self-sufficient play enabler. Now, that being said, let's rotate on to the DPS of these tank compositions. And I'm going to talk about Roadhog a little bit in a second, but the big DPS that are seeing a lot of play in the game right now is, first off, Tracer is seeing the highest amount of play by quite a bit, and then we have other hit scans that are seeing play like McCree and Ash. But ultimately, there's something in common with a lot of these characters. They can either instantly put value from distance away, or they literally can route and go in with the Wrecking Ball. So for instance, if you're playing something like a McCree or Ash, you're consistently putting damage into the enemy. You're putting damage, you're poking with your Sigma, and your Wrecking Ball is looking for opportunities based on all the damage that you're throwing out. And you can of course do some small combos like Dynamite with Slam or Headshot with Slam, or whatever the case may be. Now, when you're playing specifically Tracer, your role is going to be much more aggressive, where you're trying to coordinate not only off your Zenyatta's Discord orb, but your Wrecking Ball slams. And Tracer can also just consistently trade up in ability cooldowns. That's something that Tracer is very efficient at. You could put a little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there, and bait out all of these cooldowns. And Wrecking Ball does the same thing as well. This is why trying to have some sort of coordination with your wrecking ball is really encouraged, but even so, as Tracer, you can just look for these opportunities that the wrecking ball creates or that your team creates through just spamming and putting constant pressure on the front line. Speaking of pressure, I wanted to talk about the support that is seeing the most amount of play by a landslide right now in Zenyatta. Zenyatta is basically played in almost every single composition in Grandmaster, and another disparity in the high ranks and the low ranks that I really wanted to point out. First off, we got to talk about Tracer, who's a character that is very, very good when you have perfect control of the character, but as that starts to fall off, so does your impact and value. And when you're looking at some of the lower ranks, Diamond and below, or low Diamond and below, characters like McCree, Ash, Echo, these characters are going to be a lot easier to get value on than a character like Tracer, but of course, Tracer, when you're playing him at that high level, you will be able to carry more games and just have more impact, and you can go about this two ways. You can play the meta characters that are going to be easier for you, or you can play the character that maybe you're not going to get as much impact on, but there's big shoes to fill, and you will improve at said character. It's really up to you the way you want to go about it. Some players really like to get good at a character if it has the potential to carry all the games, or they would rather just play the characters that have easier access to value in the current meta. Now, speaking of which, I needed to go back to Zenyatta because Zenyatta is, like I said, the best support right now, period, in Grandmaster, but he is another character that is very, very difficult to play. A lot of times you're left to dry, especially when you have like a Tracer and a Wrecking Ball. You don't really have that many peelers on your team. So if the enemy are playing things, especially in low ranks like Doomfist and Genjis and Tracers, whatever the case may be, it's going to be really hard for you to survive. And sometimes the environment is even not supportive of you. But if you want to make sure that you get yourself the impact that you need to carry, you need to make sure that you can take a lot of these duels, and you need to also be cognizant of where the enemies are setting up to dive you. If a Doomfist is constantly on the left high ground, if you position yourself accordingly and give yourself enough time to at the very least put some damage in him, put a Discord in him, then your teammates are going to have a lot better time peeling you rather than you having no idea what's going on, getting dove out of nowhere and just dying. Now, honestly, Zenyatta play in the low ranks is not going to mirror Zenyatta play in the high ranks, unfortunately, because like I said, that peel line is not there, but if like a Grandmaster Zenyatta was all of a sudden playing in low ranks, he would be way more aggressive and taking these aggressive duels just because he could out-mechanic people, because also he couldn't expect any amount of peel. So it's a very interesting character, and similar to Tracer, if you want to play a character where you have big shoes to fill, Zenyatta is undoubtedly the most impactful potential support right now. But let's talk about some alternatives. So the next three see pretty similar play to each other. We have Mercy, Baptiste, and Brig. Now, Mercy has a lot of things going for her, honestly, most of all her mobility. The fact that she can go around the battlefield, especially in this kind of scrappy, disoriented comp. It's not a comp that sticks together, and it's not a comp that dives. It kind of does a lot of different things. Mercy can fill whatever role she needs to, whether it be peeler or damage booster or main healer, whatever, she can do it all. Now, of course, one of your biggest jobs is going to be actually pocketing whatever DPS anchor you have. So whether that be, you know, a Widowmaker, a McCree, an Ash, whatever DPS is staying near your team and pumping in value or damage into the enemy, that is who you really want to be enabling when you can, especially Ash. And then, of course, you can go and do whatever in the downtime or the periods that your teammates need specifically heals. Then next up, we got to talk about Baptiste. That could be absolutely amazing in this meta, especially with this Grand Canyon size amplification matrix, and still one of the most powerful singular abilities in the entire game, if not the most powerful in Immortality Field. Now, a big percentage of how impactful you're going to be on Baptiste is how well you balance these two abilities. Amplification Matrix should be something that can actually just win an entire team fight for your team, or at the very least, allow your Sigma to break shields and go from that 50% ult charge all the way to his ultimate really easily. This can set up a cycle where you use Baptiste's ultimate to help you win a team fight, and then you get ultimates off that ultimate to win the preceding team fight, and it's a cycle that keeps going and going and going because of just how fast Baptiste can build up that ultimate. Now, of course, the second part of this is your immortality field, which is an ability that can get a ton of value, but it's an ability that you could also throw out and it does absolutely nothing. It's all about timing and making sure that the value that it brings to the table actually gives your team a certain amount of boost to sustain that really either makes the enemy play out of position, catches the enemy off guard, or allows your team to reposition just so that they can stay alive and have a little bit more survivability in that team fight to turn the tables, get healed up, and go back into the enemy team when the enemy's opportunity to get a pick has vanished because of you. Now, of course, last up, I gotta talk about Brig, who's a character that is really powerful, even in Grandmaster, and as usual, Brig is gonna be better and better the lower in rank you go. Brig, in my opinion, is the easiest support if you want to climb from the lower ranks to the higher ranks as quickly as possible, because she brings a very high amount of intrinsic value, or value that you don't really have to work that hard for to get automatically because of just her Inspire heal and the fact that she's a really insane peeler. However, if you want to level up your Brig just from being just a monotonous random Brig to someone that has a lot of impact in your games, you need to make sure to try to consistently keep that Inspire time up, that Inspire percentage, trying to hit as many flail shots as you can get away with, and making sure that you really balance your stun and your shield, knowing what cooldowns you can counter, what cooldowns you can shut down, you know, things like Roadhog Breather, things like stunning a Wrecking Ball that gets too close to your team, or a Sigma that's winding up a rock. There's a lot of different cooldowns that you can contest on this character, so there is still a lot on this character that I think can differentiate you from a decent Brig to an amazing one. Now let's talk about some honorable mentions that just missed the list that are still completely viable. Even in the higher ranks, they're completely viable. Characters like Roadhog, sometimes Ryan Zarya is played according to the statistics. Lucio and Moira just miss out as well, most likely being played with that Ryan and Zarya. And a lot of DPS barely miss the cutoff, because you gotta understand DPS are typically more interchangeable. So if you're really good at Widow, or you're really good at Hanzo, or you're an Echo player, there's a lot of different, you know, moving variables that you could fit in that DPS slot besides the top of the meta ones, but a lot of that is going to be completely irrelevant unless you're playing at that top rank. However, here's the big takeaway from this entire video though. Even though I'm laying out a foundation for what the meta is, it is important that a lot of the way that the meta exists is because of the people in the meta playing the certain strong characters to a certain level. And in order to explain that, let's talk about that Sigma example for a second. Sigma is the most powerful character in the entire game, and he's a character that literally dictates the meta around his impact. But you tell me, what is the average impact of a Silver Sigma? Can that Sigma play Sigma the way that he's supposed to be played to actually block out a lot of the characters in the game? Most likely not. And what matters more at the lower ranks than playing the meta? Getting impact of value every fight, valuing your life, learning proficiency at your select number of specialized characters. You got to remember that the meta is always changing, so what matters more is your development as a player, your fundamentals, and developing your game sense, which is something that a lot of these tier lists can really help with, which is one of the big reasons why I do them in the first place. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for in-depth VODs, advanced tips and tricks, map guides, hero guides, and much more. We got it all on the GameLeap website, so do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But thank you so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time,